Hey, what's up coders, welcome back to my channel. Today we will see what an inherited widget is all about and how and when to use it in your Flutter application. Well, if you ask me the definition of it, it is pretty straightforward. It's a built-in central state storage. Now, to understand the definition in more detail, let me cite you with an example. You know that in Flutter, it's all about widgets. If you want to access or if you want to pass a data between the widgets, how do you do it? Of course, you can pass data between widgets using constructors. That's one of the simple and easier approach, right? But what if there are a lot of widgets, or what if your app gets a bit complex? Definitely it becomes messy if you're using this constructor approach, because each time you change the route, you have to keep passing this piece of data or the state back and forth. Definitely, I would say this is not an ideal approach, and it's definitely cumbersome. So then what is the solution for it? So for this, I would say Inheritedwidget comes to rescue. By using this widget, you can give the entire tree and access to the same piece of state or data. So this way you can do the state management of your entire application. Inheritedwidget allows you to pass that particular state to all of its ancestors. So then you don't have to keep typing your code in every class or pass the state down to its children. It's available in this central repository, and all you have to do is just access it using the inherited widget. So if you have observed in your Flutter application media query, dot of context or theme of context, all these are inherited widget. You can use these lines of code anywhere. You don't have any constraints on it. How is it possible? It's all possible because these media query theme are all inherited widget, custom inherited widget. So that's how you're able to use them anywhere in your application. So keeping that in mind, I have designed a very simple UI today, which is called the event page. So what I'm doing here is, first let me explain you the structure of the page, and then I'll show you the demo, and then we will move on with the implementation. So if you see the structure, I have here a home page, which just displays a particular event, and then I have this floating button which adds an event. So when I click on this, I have this new event section where I can add the details of the event, and then I have a submit with the home page and an event page. The home page is the one that you've already seen, that is this one, and if you go to the event page, it's also displaying the event. So what I'm trying to demonstrate here is, whenever I add the details in the event page, I'm not passing the event details to the home page or the event page. All I'm doing is I'm passing these details to the inherited widget, and then in my home page and my event page, I'm accessing those details from my inherited widget. So I'm not using the constructor approach here. So this is a very simple example. Definitely you can use it like to display a username when the user is logged in throughout your application. You can use that, or you have a particular token to be displayed, or some kind of data that you want to be accessed throughout your application. Definitely you can go for this inherited widget, but keep it simple. But as and when your app gets complex, you cannot use this approach also. So in the coming videos, we will see what is a better approach depending on your use case and your preference. So as of now, we will see how to implement this. Well, moving on with the implementation, first I'm going to design the three screens, which is the home screen with this event detail, and the next screen is where you literally add the event details, and then the event page. So first let's design all this, and then we will see how to implement the inherited widget. So here I have a very simple structure of a Flutter project with the app bar. So you would see I'm going to create this UI. Well, this section is basically the event details section where I'm giving a material with a border radius circular with 24 just to achieve that white box section, and then giving some shadow color as well. And here comes the content of your uh, material box section. Currently I'm using a very static value here, but once I implement the inherited widget, this would be replaced with a dynamic value or the inherited values. So as of now, let me build a UI and then I'll show you how to replace this with the inherited value. So similar way, I'm gonna add the other details, which is the event details. So the first one was the name. So here we are defining that when I click on the floating button, I need to be routed to the add event detail screen. So that's what I'm doing here. So I'm just using a simple navigator. All right, so we have completed with the home page. So if you see, we have done with the UI of this particular page, and now we are saying that on click it needs to route to this particular page, that is the adding event details. So we will design this page now, but I'm not going to define this page because this is similar to your home page, so you would find the exact detail. I'm defining toScreen just to show you that how data is being passed between pages without using any constructor. For that reason, I have just used toScreen. So let's move on with the event detail screen now. All right, we need another data container which is called the event, just to hold all the properties that you would like to pass or access access it across your app. So for that, I'm going to create this event class, and I want these properties to be available across my application. So this is a simple one. And now we will move on to our add event, which is nothing but the form where I'm going to enter my form details. So let's see how to implement that. So the first thing is the form. As you can see that the text fields are one below the other, so I'm just using a column widget and placing all the text form details inside it. And you can see that I've chosen the keyboard type as the text. You could use number depending on your use case, and then just giving a decoration, which is the input decoration with the label text. And then I'm going to add a validator saying if you do not enter any details, then you would get a validation message saying please enter the event name. So that's what is being tracked in this part of the code. So I'm going to say if the value dot length is equal to 0, then I'm going to say enter event name. If not, it's null. And also I'm trying to save these details in a particular variable, and then I would be able to access that variable in my inherited widget. So you could see that on saved is available, and then I'm going to pass that value, and then I'm going to store it in another variable called for event value. This could be any name of your choice, and I'm passing my value inside it. So this was for one of the text form field. So I'm going to repeat the same thing for the details, location, and the date. And this is for the details part, and this is for the location and date. Alright, so you see all the text form fields. Now after this we're gonna add the buttons. So button is a simple raised button. So let me quickly add those details as well. And now inside this raised button, I'm going to add another property, which is the on pressed. Now what happens when I click on submit? So I'm going to create another function which is called submit the event details, and we will see what this function contains in a moment. Similarly, then I'm going to define the home page and the event page button. So it's a simple container with a row of buttons. So I'm going to quickly add those details since it's pretty straightforward to do that. So you can see that I've added the container with the row widget, and inside it I have two raised buttons. So one is the home page, and another one is the event page, and then I'm just adding a navigator on press to go to that corresponding pages. So it's a simple button which has some navigation push functions inside it. So this is what it is. Now we'll define the submit event details, and we will also define these variables. So first thing, we're going to add for event details and date value and location value, so that whenever you enter all of them in your text form field, it gets captured in these variables. Then another thing is I'm going to give a key, which is a final edit key. Basically it's a global key for my form. And then I'm going to define this inside my form. And now there's one function that's left over, which is the submit event details. So let's define this function as well. So as of now, I'm going to keep it empty because once I complete my inherited widget, we will be in a better position to define this function. Now we have our home page. We also have our event page because it's similar to this. So I'm just going to copy this code here and just change this to event page, and we have these details. So and also we have the container, which is the event container, which has the properties. Now we're going to define our inherited widget. So now moving on to the inherited widget implementation. It's very simple. All you have to do is follow these few steps and then you are good to go. So first thing what we'll do is we'll create a stateful widget called state container. Okay, so let's do that. So since I have these shortcuts, it's easy for me to do. So I'm going to create a stateful widget and I'm going to give a name called state container. Okay, just for simplicity, I'm going to remove this underscore in the beginning and to make it easy. So this is what a state container is. Alright, so now we're going to define our inherited container class. So it's pretty straightforward. All you have to do is just type inherited widget, and I'm going to remove this part. We don't need this section. The only section that I would be needing is the constructor and the update should notify at the moment. So I'm going to change this name quickly to inherited container. Okay, and then quickly copy this over here. All right, and then since we have already created state container state, let's use that. So we're going to add final state container state, and then I'm going to define it as a data and then pass that in my constructor. All right, so I'm going to say required this dot data, and also I'm going to so there you go, we have defined the inherited container. Now we will move on to the state container and define the logic part of our app. So here we are going to say final, and my data container is event. So I'm just going to define that here, and then I'm going to use those properties here as well. So I'm going to say add required. There you go. So you have the constructor. And then next, this is where you're going to build your inherited widget, like media query dot off we had, or the theme. So similar way we will have our own inherited widget. So let's define that part. So we're going to say static this is where you're defining your inherited widget. Now this is a section where you're going to define your logic and saying that add in all my details to the properties, and we are checking if the event is null or not. So here what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a method called say update event info, something like that, and then I'm going to pass in my property details like the name, now if the event is equals to null, else then I have entirely a different logic where I'm going to say set state. So now you have created the inherited widget. Now we will see how to implement this widget in your home page and in your event page so that it gets updated. Alright, so let's see how to do that. So first let's go to the home page. Alright, first thing what you have to do is you have to enclose your entire application with the state container so that it is your so that you will be able to access this property throughout your application. So that's state container. Next, going to the home page. So first thing we need to define our inherited widget. So how do you do that? Come to the build section of your home page and there you define your inherited widget. So in my case I'm just going to give my inherited widget, and this is nothing but your state container. That's what you've defined here. So it's going to be the state container. Now in order to access those properties I'm going to define event. So with the help of the event I would be able to access the property, and I'm going to assign this my inherited widget to this event and what the event details. So I have created the widget here and I'm passing the event inside it and accessing it through this event variable. Now how do I access it in my application is let's move on to the section where we need to display the event name. So I think this is the one. Yeah, so in the place of event name we will do a check. So the check would be we're going to say if event is not equal to null. So if this is the case, then we're going to say that text, and instead of the static value I'm going to use the inherited widget value. So that would be the dollar, and here I'm going to say event dot event name. So this event is nothing but the value that comes from my inherited widget event. So I'm going to say text event and the event name, and then I'm going to give some styling factor to it. Okay, now what if it is not? It has to display some message. So for that I'm going to say if not, display no event name. Okay, there you go. So we have covered it for the first one. So similar way we are going to add for the event details also. So there you go. So we have added all the details. So this is how you access it. Now I'm going to add the same details to this event page also so that you would be able to see the values in the event page as well. So there you go. We have the event page detail also updated with the event name, and the event comes through the inherited widget. So I'm nowhere passing through the constructor. Okay. Now when we were designing the form, we had left a particular function empty saying submit the event details. So this is where we're going to add the details now. So what I'm going to do here is when I submit, if my validation is success and if I submit, I have to submit it to my inherited widget, not pass it to the home page or the event page. I have to pass it to the inherited widget, and inherited widget is the one that's going to give the values to the home page and the event page. So let's see how to do this. So first thing, I have to define my inherited widget. So I'm going to get the instance of it. So I'm going to say my inherited widget here as well. After this, I'm going to check if my edit key, that is, I'm going to check the validation here. So if my current state dot validate is successful, if this is successful, what I'm going to do is I'm going to say my inherited widget dot I had defined a method called update event info. So here, this is the one. So I'm going to call this function and I'm going to add the details to it. So let's see how to add it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use navigator.pop. So if my validation is not, so this is what my submit happens. All right, I think I missed one part of it, which was the state container definition. In your state container state, in your build method, you have to define the data part. Yeah, and instead of returning a container, we are going to return an inherited container in this case. All right, so let's quickly add a few event details. I'm going to say submit. So there you go. So you can see the details getting updated on the home page. I'm not passing any constructor value. Now to see the same details, it also gets accessed by the event page because we are using the inherited widget. So this is how you use inherited widget and pass data between your widgets rather than using the constructor. So that's it for this video. So if you do like it, please give it a like and do subscribe. If you find this informative, please do share it. Thank you.